Hello everyone. This is a video on sentence structure and how we can create increasingly complex structures with the correct conjunctions and punctuation. Our goal is that we express complex ideas with varied and sophisticated sentence structure so that your writing is ultimately more engaging to your audience. As a refresher, your sentence structure could be simple, complex, or compound. A simple sentence is essentially an independent clause with a subject and a verb, or subjects and verbs, and it's a complete thought or a complete sentence. For example, Thanksgiving is the best holiday, or they must pass a road test. There's one idea in each of these sentences. It's a simple sentence. Sometimes, however, we add a dependent clause to an independent sentence, and we end up with a complex sentence. We're adding a dependent clause to this simple sentence, and that gives us a sentence that is a little bit more involved. This part right here is the dependent clause in this. Thanksgiving is the best holiday because it is easy to find pumpkin pie. This part here is dependent on the yellow part here, the primary simple sentence. Or similarly, after new drivers complete a written exam, they must pass a road test. Here's your simple sentence here with the dependent clause added to add a little bit more elaboration. But for the purpose of expanding your writing sentence structure, let's look at compound sentences. Compound sentences are two or more independent sentences joined together. Thanksgiving is the best holiday, for it is easy to find pumpkin pie, or new drivers complete a written exam, and they must pass a road test. Take a moment and review the three types of sentences. All right, let's take a look at compound sentences and how we can combine related ideas. So, for example, we may start with a sentence like, Americans enjoy a high standard of living. And we could combine that with a lot of different interpretations, such as, we should work hard to see that everyone in the world enjoys this high standard. Or, it is threatened by our short-sighted understanding of renewable energy. Or, there are significant inequalities even within our developed nation. Or, Americans have worked hard to achieve this standard. So we'll want to say a lot of different ideas and combine them together in a compound sentence. The key is how we connect them appropriately using punctuation that allows our reader to get the connections between ideas. So let's take a look at a few items. We can connect compound sentences using commas, semicolons, and colons. And it's been my experience that students struggle most with these two right here, though there are some common errors around commas. Let's take a look at how we can combine compound sentences, or combine sentences. You can connect two sentences, two independent sentences, using a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Some of you may know these. These are the fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so, called fanboys. So a few examples of how this works. These are from the essays that you looked at in the first session of this unit. I know one example doesn't make a case. There's an independent simple sentence, comma, yet at night I see a parade of students who are angry and resentful for having been passed along till they could no longer even pretend to keep up. This is from the Praise of the F-Word essay. Another example, most men form an opinion of how they look in the 7th grade. That's one idea, one simple sentence, comma, and they stick to it for the rest of their lives. Another example. Of course, in the age of the internet, this cannot be the only criteria to make such conclusions, comma, but it still makes a contrast with what is important and trendy in American teenage culture, status and fashion. And we'll get into the colon in a little bit. Another one. Because of her allergies, Carol does not eat wheat bread. Now, this is actually a complex sentence here, but we can connect it using comma, nor does she drink milk. So that comma is one way to combine things, but we need to be careful to avoid particular mistakes. It is incorrect to connect two simple sentences or two other complex sentences with only a comma and no coordinating conjunction. We cannot use a comma alone. We must have those fanboys with us. So if you use two sentences with a comma, you must have for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so with the comma, or it is an error called a comma splice. Take a moment and review those commas and the coordinating conjunctions. Okay, now let's talk about how you can combine two sentences using a semicolon. You can use a semicolon by itself between the two sentences, or you can combine them with a conjunctive adverb, which is a special type of adverb that tells you the relationship between the ideas. This is a fairly extensive list of conjunctive adverbs, and they tell you the types of relationships. For example, additionally, this word is signaling to your reader, I'm going to tell you more. Or consequently, this word is telling us has something to do with cause-effect. However, tells us there's an opposition. Similarly, more agreement. There's a lot of different words you can use. And when you use a semicolon, you may very well have the opportunity to explain a relationship using conjunctive adverbs. You don't have to use a conjunctive adverb to use a semicolon, but often they do go together. So let's take a look at a few examples. They attempt 2 runs and a pass, semicolon, all 3 fail. We have a complete sentence here, a complete sentence here, and a semicolon in the middle. The superiority of each of these kinds of medicine have a long-standing history, as each of them have proved its effectiveness, semicolon. Therefore, comma, understanding their advantages and drawbacks is crucial for forming one's point of view. So you have a sentence here, and you have a sentence here, with a semicolon in the middle, and a conjunctive adverb, comma, which shows you the relationship between these two. Here's another example. This is from the Killer Bean essay. Millions of acres of rainforest and jungle were planted with coffee trees, semicolon. However, comma, that was not a completely detrimental move. So again, you have an idea here, an idea here, 2 independent sentences, a semicolon between them, and a conjunctive adverb with a comma. A last example here. Habitats for animals were not drastically changed, semicolon. Indeed, comma, the tropical ecosystems were much the same as before because the small coffee trees growing near the ground didn't require any forests to be cleared or plants eliminated. You see we have one idea here, and this is a very complex sentence here, but they are combined with a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb and a comma here. So you're putting the conjunctive adverb in between the semicolon and the comma. Pay attention and avoid these mistakes when you're using semicolons. If you have a conjunctive adverb, such as however, therefore, subsequently, fortunately, consequently, any of those words that were on that list, it does go with a semicolon and not a comma. So if you're going to use one of these words that indicates the relationships, one of these conjunctive adverbs, make sure you have a semicolon. And if you're going to use a coordinating conjunction, that's again for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so, those words are going to go with commas, not semicolons. Do remember that if you have a second sentence after a semicolon, the first letter is lowercase. And do remember that you need a complete sentence after the semicolon, whether you use a conjunctive adverb or just a semicolon. Take a moment now and review semicolons and conjunctive adverbs. All right, now let's take a look at how we use a colon to connect 2 different ideas. Again, 2 sentences, a compound sentence. We can connect 2 sentences using a colon when the second idea in the second sentence is the essential point that you want to emphasize. That's what you want your reader to take away. And we can also use it when the second sentence is a quotation. For example, take a look at this one here. Bob and I carry out our own touchdown ritual, colon. We alternate high fives between our left and right hands 6 times. So the colon here is giving emphasis to what that ritual is. Our ritual is these alternating high fives. And the colon is there to say, hey reader, this is an important thing I want to define for you, our touchdown ritual. Another example, and this is from the Dave Barry essay on men and women. Anyway, to get back to my original point, colon. If you're a man and a woman asks you how she looks, you're in big trouble. The colon connects these 2 ideas, and the colon gives emphasis to what comes right after it. Another example. The amounts of money young people spend on books and magazines is dramatically low, colon. Just about 2% of the money they possess. And this colon here is again giving emphasis that this amount really is dramatically low. It's 2%. Last example, this is from the Facebook Defriending Facebook essay. Deactivating an account requires checking off one of 6 reasons. Here's a colon, and then there's a quotation after it. I spend too much time using Facebook is one. This is temporary, I'll be back is another. And again, the colon here is signaling I'm going to give you some of these reasons. I'm going to elaborate more on this. I'm going to draw attention to these quotations. Pay attention and avoid these mistakes when you're using colons. Be sure the colon is used for the emphasis of the main point or as an introduction to a quotation. If you're trying to show that the second idea agrees with the first idea, or negates or contradicts the first idea, or that it's an example of cause-effect, probably you should use a semicolon instead. Colons are for emphasizing the point that you've just made or introducing a quotation. Also know that a colon can introduce a dependent clause that starts with a lowercase letter. So it doesn't have to be a complete thought afterwards. It can be a dependent clause, a word, or a phrase. Take a moment now and review colons that are used for emphasis and quotations. Okay, to sum this up, there are 3 ways to connect ideas, to get more complex ideas by combining sentences. First is to use a comma with the coordinating conjunctions for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. The second idea, or the second way of combining sentences, is to use a semicolon with conjunctive adverbs. And these are again words like otherwise, similarly, however, thus, therefore, consequently. Conjunctive adverbs that show the relationship between the ideas. And again, you don't have to use a conjunctive adverb just because you use a semicolon. But if you do have a conjunctive adverb, goes with a semicolon. And then the third way is to use colons for greater emphasis and for introducing quotations. By combining our sentences, we get more engaging material by showing the relationships between our ideas, whether those relationships are agreement, addition of information, negation, cause-effect, example of concept, qualification, whatever the relationship is. We get more complex writing, more engaging writing, by helping our readers see the relationship between those ideas. Punctuating those ideas correctly helps our readers to correctly understand our thoughts and to see the sophistication and maturity in our writing. Now go ahead and take the quiz in Schoology and see how well you understood these concepts.